This is the Fix Your Sciatica podcast.
As of this recording, my daughter is a little over 8 weeks old. Prior to recording this, I actually took her to the pediatrician. She's grown big. She actually got her first shot. And throughout this journey of being a new father, doing all the various different activities, and even just having to take care of a newborn, it got me really thinking about how are parents able to do what I'm doing when they're hurt? Because I even noticed for myself, I'm holding my daughter on my chest and she's sleeping and I have to pick something up off the floor. Now I have to contort myself, not in the best positions. And I'm thinking, if I was hurt, I don't know if I would be able to do this. And so one, how can we parent and take care of kids while we're in an active state of pain? But also number two, knowing that injury recovery does require some work, how can we actually fit that into our day? But then it goes into the bigger question of how can we take care of ourselves as parents when we are caring for other people such as our kids, right? And so rather than have you listeners just listen to me speak for about 30 to 40 minutes, I have the expert in parental self-care, a good friend of mine, Rob Brown, who was actually a guest a few years back. And here he is because he is deep into the parenting aspect and also coaches parents on maximizing their health and their fitness. So Rob, it's so great to see you. I'm so happy that you are on the episode today.
Thank you for having me. And just like we did last time, a few years back, I had me a bowl of pho today. So I'm charged up, I'm fueled, and now I'm ready to go.
Pho is the best. It's the breakfast of champions, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'll do it all the time. And that's, for you listeners out there, Rob and I go way back, and Rob will tell you a little bit more about himself, but we go way back just in our early days from like a career standpoint, but we really connected over our love of pho, and I knew that once he told me about that we were going to be friends forever. So this is really, really a huge honor. For the listeners who have not heard of you yet, let's reintroduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. So again, I'm Rob Brown. I've been coaching fitness since 2015. I was in person back when everything was opened up. When things closed down in 2020, I started my online business. And in 2020, coincidentally or not, also my wife and I welcomed our son. And I realized real quickly right then and there how hard it was for me, someone who loved working out, how hard it was to fit that into my day-to-day. And I realized, once I figured out for myself, I realized other people must have these issues as well. There wasn't a lot of programs out there for busy parents. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I now have two at home, 4 and 1 years old, and it's tough. So I designed a program specifically for parents so that they can feel energized, feel good, as well as thrive as parents, as the day-to-day challenges are challenging. I'll say it that way. They're challenging, but there's no reason we can't take care of ourselves while taking care of our kids.
And one of the things I was going into this, everyone who was like, that I said that my wife and I were expecting, they were so excited, but they said, get ready, it's the hardest thing ever. And hearing that was so interesting because of the fact that I said, yeah, I know it's going to be a lot of work. And initially I thought it was just like a mindset shift. I'm like, oh, you're just looking at it because like it sucks or whatever. And now that I'm living into it, I have to say that yes, it is a lot of work. And maybe it's just how my wife and I are organizing our life right now. But yes, it's a lot of work, but I will say I was surprised that it's not as bad as people were describing to me, but it's also maybe because of the fact that we have an 8-week-old. And I know it obviously does change up, but I found it to be really interesting. And particularly what's really nice is that I feel like my wife and I, we kind of got into a really great stride of things. And I know that for me and my wife, we're very deliberate on how we go about doing things and trying to experiment and see what works and what doesn't, and things that don't work, we get rid of completely. But for the main reason of today is trying to focus on some self-care, but like particularly from like self-care and then even from an injury standpoint, because a lot of the folks who are listening are actually dealing with back pain and sciatica. They're like, I want to be able to pick my kid up, or it's like I bent over to pick up a burp cloth, and all of a sudden I'm on the floor, I can't get back up, and my kid's looking at me like, what do I do here, right? And so before we take a deep dive into kind of like the nitty gritty about that, one of the big things you actually talked about throughout your journey was identifying, okay, you did kind of find this groove of being able to organize yourself. Now we can spend literally days talking about all the different tasks that we have to do for our kids, right? But there's always going to be something to do. So I think in short, kind of like to kind of from 1,000-foot view, how do you go about organizing your day so you can fit in, we'll hit it off the bat. Like how do you go about organizing your day so you can fit in like doing everything that you need to do for your children? Obviously you need to set aside time for your partner, your wife, but then also like there's things that you need to do to make sure that you're healthy, you're resilient, so you can take care of the kids even better.
Yeah, definitely. So it's all about the teamwork aspect between my wife and I. Like we have full communication, what we need to do, what we would like to do, what we want to do. So we also have just, I don't want to say roles and responsibilities, but there's just an understanding that, for example, I do dinner Monday through Friday. She does dinner on weekends, right? So we know that's what's going to happen. And that predictability allows us to build our day around it. She knows that I like to work out Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. So that predictability, she knows that if she needs to do something, I need that time for myself. And if she asks for something similar, I give that to her. So having just like a routine that works for us where everyone can do what they need to do, that's actually our top priority. Obviously, we're washing dishes. Obviously, we're doing laundry. But we are really adamant that she gets something as simple as a shower. She gets to shower every morning. I'll take care of the kids. In the evening, I'll shower. If it's not for that communication, if it's not for that communication, then things break down very easily. That's when the dishes don't get washed, right? That's when you don't get the shower, don't get the time to actually take a relaxing shower, not just a speed shower. So there's the obvious list of things. For me, it's working out. For her, it's, watching, I want to call it trash TV. She watches her TV shows at night, but we know that about each other because we've made that obvious to each other.
I'm really glad that you brought that up because I don't think enough, we'll say like couples and partners really bring that into the realm of trying to manage a household. In essence, the household, like parents and baby or babies, it's like a small organization, right? It's a small business, right? And that was one of the things that I also discovered. It was like communication. You got to be able to say like, what am I capable of? Like, what are these roles and tasks? What are we going to be responsible for, right? And then from there, it allows us to know that, you don't have to do everything. And because of that, it allows you to be able to divide and conquer and also focus on those things. They're actually going to be particularly helpful for your care. So let's talk about self-care and like the concept of following programs. My background, physical therapist, also I used to own a gym, like background has been in fitness for a large part of my career. I know that I can write a workout program for myself. However, especially now being the father, like there's so many other things that are occupying my head. So at this point in time for me, I hire a coach myself or I follow a specific program that I didn't create because I just wanted to be able to just go and work out. Which then brings up the concept of long-term, like consistency, low intensity type of stuff versus like really high intensity, like short-term programs. I think I already know the answer, but when it comes to trying to take care of yourself, especially from an exercise and health standpoint, from where you're at, where do you find the most success? Is it like the long, lower intensity, consistent stuff, or is it like the real hard, like let's be super restrictive and we're only going to do this just for 30 days and then we go back to doing something else? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so I think that's a mental shift that a lot of parents struggle with because they used to do, or at least they have friends that used to do the short term, the hard 75s, for example, where you're doing 2 workouts a day or you're being really restrictive on like a low carb diet, and they have results. So they know that works, but now they're a parent. They have a newborn, they have kids, and the number one and 1B issue that parents have is lack of energy and lack of time. And when we say energy, a lot of times we're thinking of like just overall bandwidth, right? Just overall, what am I able to do? And those short, intense 30-day challenges or 75 hard type style programs, they require a lot of bandwidth. They require a lot of energy. If you were to ask me to do some short 30-day, run 2 miles every day, don't miss a day for 30 days, I can't promise you I can get through a week. I really can't. So overall, we have to think of like what's sustainable and what we're actually capable of in our new phase of life, our new phase of being a parent of one or multiple kids. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is low intensity, something that I can get done in 30 minutes or less, something that I actually look forward to, something that I don't hate and loathe. Because if you were to ask me in 2019, Rob, what's your workout going to be? I'll say, Ashley, it's going to be burpees and running. And then I'm going to throw a heavy barbell around. And then today no, I'm going to walk for 20 minutes with a stroller. And I'm going to listen to a podcast I like. And that'll be my day. So does that mean that results won't arrive as fast? Sure. But since it's sustainable, will the results be more likely? Sure.
This is some question I didn't send over to you, but it got me really thinking. We have these two different dynamic programs, lower intensity, long consistency, higher likelihood of long-term success versus the high intensity aspect. For someone who is at a point where they're like, I really need to make a change, do you think, sorry, this I guess is a yes or no question. It's like, do you think it's necessary for people to experience like that high intensity stuff to kind of crash and burn before they realize, wow, I should actually go a little bit slower and expand the length of my goals moving forward?
It definitely helps. It definitely helps. I always encourage someone to find something that they are consistent and that they enjoy, like legitimately enjoy. And that's why people who I have a father-in-law and a mother-in-law who love pickleball. They live and why? Because they enjoy it. So they enjoy it. They have the bandwidth for it. They do it all the time. So if you are that type of person who really loves CrossFit, but guess what? CrossFit is a 1-hour class that you have to commute to. You got to commute back. You probably don't have that time. You probably don't have that energy. We can let you burn out that first week and then find an in-between. Okay, maybe you can't go to that 5:30 class down the street, but maybe you can work out at home. Maybe you can go on some intense runs up and down the street that only takes you 30 minutes and you're right back to taking care of your kids. Or you burn out and you say, I can't do this right now, but I'm going to get back to this down the road. And that's where a lot of people find themselves. Like they don't stop loving that high intensity stuff. They just kind of put a pause on it. They do something else in the meanwhile, and they'll ramp up and return to it down the line.
That makes total sense. And so going along the lines of being able to set aside time to work out, for example, everyone has got 24 hours in a day. This episode,
I hate that phrase.
yeah, right. So here's the thing. It's like everyone's got 24 hours in a day, and this episode, and also a lot of what Rob's content actually talks about, is not necessary. It's like everyone who says that everyone's got 24 hours in a day, kind of in a way, it kind of like shames people into trying to get things done. What I really love about the content that you're providing, the type of coaching that you're doing, is that you're making it accessible and reasonable for people to actually take action into improving their health and improving like their daily lifestyle. And it goes back onto the aspect of like communication and what we were talking about. And so when I look back, when I look into how are we able to actually parent when we are hurt or sick, there's 3 main tiers that I actually found to be particularly helpful, which is actually piggybacking off of what you were saying. So the first one is actually identifying the tasks, right? It's like what needs to get done around the house. And then the second part is actually capitalizing on each other's strengths to support each other, especially when we're in a period of weakness. And that's where the communication is. One of the things I find to be, or notice to be challenging, is to say, honey, partner, I need help with this. Or, honey, partner, you should be responsible for this and this. And so through your experience, What is that conversation, or how does that conversation go when it comes to trying to identify, like, okay, whose role is going, like, whose responsibility is it to cook dinner Monday through Friday? Like, tell us a little bit more about your process to be able to say, like, hey, I will take this priority while you can focus on this priority.
Sure. So the question that is thrown between my wife and I a lot is like, in this moment, whether it's at 5 p.m. to cook dinner or at 6 a.m. for early wake ups, whatever it is, in this moment, who has the most battery? Because if I'm on 10%, but my wife's on 2%, then it's going to be on me. And also just the honesty of knowing that neither of us are going to, fudge the numbers and say, no, I'm really tired. I'm more tired than you are. We're both going to be honest with each other. We have that trust in each other, so that I'll give you an example. Our daughter went through a sleep regression, and we usually take turns throughout the night. She gets her the first time, I'll get her the second time, back and forth. There was a time where she elbows me in the middle of the night, hey, can you get her daughter? And I said, no, I got her last time. And she's like, no, you didn't. I got her an hour ago. And it's like, no, I was asleep. I had no idea that event actually took place. So my battery was a little bit more charged at that point. So now I got to jump in that task. So it's just having that plan going in, like, hey, this is what we're doing tonight. We know she has a sleep regression, so we'll trade back and forth. And then on the other end, when both of our batteries are depleted, like giving each other that space to recharge. So whether it's a walk for me around the neighborhood, or whether she has to go watch the British Bake Off at the end of the night, we have to recharge at some point so that we can do it again.
Makes total sense. I find that to be extremely a beautiful strategy. I'm glad that you're doing it. And the one strategy that my wife and I have been doing, now granted that we've been doing this for 8 weeks, right? So we're very much beginners, but this is what's working for us for so far. But what we end up doing is trying to find a period where we're both in a low stress environment. So it's like, okay, our daughter's sleeping, we're both fed, we're both caffeinated. Now, granted that we only drink 1 cup of coffee a day, and we're going to keep it that way, I hopefully. Low stress environment, fed, not irritated, and we talk about things that need to get done, and then from there we have this communication of being like, okay, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this. And I found that to be really helpful, and especially having that plan going into tonight, especially knowing that we are going to be somewhat limited on sleep compared to others, right? So that's particularly useful. Let's talk about trying to fit in some time to care for ourselves, whether it be exercise, whether it be eating right, whether it be just trying to get a nap. First off, let's talk about workouts and movement, because I think workouts and movement, a lot of people, especially who are dealing with sciatica and low back pain, they're like, I gotta move because I'm spending the majority of my time being sedentary, and I need to do this because if not, my body's going to get extremely stiff. There's some people who are like, well, you got to dedicate 90 minutes a day, where it's just, you got to set aside 90 minutes. And then there are other folks who are like, you know what, 90 minutes is a good number. We could strive for 45 minutes instead. And then there's a third group, which I actually recently discovered, which has said, all right, well, yeah, 90 minutes a day, but maybe 90 minutes cumulative over the span of 24 hours. So when it comes to trying to fit things in, for you as the parent, what would be your go-to approach?
Definitely all of them. So let me explain. It'd be great if I got 90 uninterrupted minutes to do your warm-up, your workout, your cool down, shower, change back into clothes and get ready. That's a great plan A, but have a plan B in your back pocket. Say, okay, if I don't get that, and you probably won't, like, just set up the expectations. You probably won't. Okay, what can I do in 45 minutes? Okay, and what does that look like if I can do this in 45 minutes? And then, of course, plan C is, okay, what if I only get 20 minutes in the morning and then 30 minutes at night? What does that look like? And having those just written in your head. In my head, yeah, I have a workout that's going to take an hour. I don't think in the past 4 years, I think I've done it twice. And it's on a weekend when a kid is taking a long nap, and I'm like, oh, I actually have some time to it's like a surprise to me that I get to use plan A. Oh, I get to go and do this workout. Most of the time it's plan B. Let me just do a shortened version of that. And if that isn't in the cards, okay. It's 7 p.m. The house is asleep. Let me go on a long walk. That's going to be my workout today. What people struggle with is they only have the plan A. They only know how to do this workout this one way. And that is 90 minutes. And when they can't do it because they don't have the energy, because they don't have the time, because they just don't have the bandwidth for it, they just throw it out the window, say, I guess I'll start again on Monday kind of ordeal. And we just know that that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for inactivity. So having just those backup plans in mind will get you more consistent than you've probably ever been before.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to have like those contingency plans, because nothing is ever going to work out in our favor. Sorry, that's a very pessimistic way. Most of the time it won't. In some cases it will, right? And so we have to look into it saying, this is the scenario and this is what we're going to take, so we're just going to have to accept it. And so it allows us to actually start moving forward versus being paralyzed and saying, well, if I didn't have time today or the bandwidth today, well, if I forget it, I'm just going to go do it tomorrow. And I think that's one of the most important things, especially when it comes to injury recovery specifically, because of the fact that for the most part, we do need to have some time for our tissues to heal, but there are a lot of activities and behaviors that we can do that will actually allow us to recover faster, whether it be some stretching or some actual exercise that needs to get done. But then also another part of it is being aware of the positions that we're in when we are doing like some of the caregiving, doing all the caregiving activities that we're doing for our children. And so I recognize, especially like I'm 5'11", and our current changing station is about 3.5 feet off the ground. Now that's one change table. Another change table is probably about 4 feet, so it's a little bit higher. And I realize I'm not like bent over as much, and so I realize that if I'm bent over for a long period of time, I'm like, okay, my back is starting to ache, and it's like, all right, well, what do I need to do to be able to make sure that my body doesn't hurt as much? It's like, okay, well, do I need to change how I'm standing at this 3.5 foot tall changing table? Do I need to add more stretching into my day, or do I need to do a little bit of both? And when you approach your aches and pains, especially as a parent, like that, where you say, where's the, I guess in a way, where's the fault that's coming in? What do I need to change to actually make myself feel better? It starts allowing us to figure out what are some of like the big problem, like how can we solve this problem? Which then brings up like all the awkward positions that we're in, right? And we look at, people will say, well, you should never pick anything up with a rounded back. It's like, well, good luck trying to pick something off the floor when you have a kid glued to your chest, right? Like you can't exactly hinge without falling over.
This episode is brought to you by the Sciatica Protocol. Experience pain relief directly through your phone, anytime, anywhere. Interested in learning more? Check us out at ifixyoursciatica.com/the-sciatica-protocol.
When it comes to overall like body health, let's talk about like positions wise, because like you're actually having your parents and your clients like work out. What are some of the key things, key pointers that you provide for them to help them stay pain and injury free?
So it's just the stress on. A lot of my clients come from a competitive background where they used to go to the gym and used to high five for the heaviest weights, regardless of form, or high five for the fastest workouts, regardless of safety. And it's just slowing them down, because we want to speed up because we think speeding up burns more calories. So that's one side of it. We want to speed up because it looks cooler if we do this bad, but there is a price to pay. So, for example, with my daughter on my carrying my daughter on my hip and shoulder, I had to take my shoes off. I had to squat down while holding this 20-pound child. And it's like being able to squat, keep my chest upright so she doesn't fall, is a skill. And where do I learn that? Well, I learned that from working out. I learned that from having a kettlebell here or a dumbbell here or something like that. So whenever I'm helping parents work out, don't get me wrong, Ashley, bicep curls are cool. I love bicep curls, but I'm trying to give them exercises that they can see almost immediate payoff in everyday life. So whether that's, like you said, having a strong back so they can bend over and pick up a child from the bottom of that crib, or if it's to squat down while holding a child, squat down to play with a child. Even your 2-year-old toddler, you have to get down there to play with them. You have to get up off the ground every time they get up and they sprint away from you. You have to be pretty quick. So when I'm running a workout for someone, it's like, okay, what functional exercises is going to make parenting easier? And there's a lot of them. As long as you know what a parent does, you can write a good program to help them with that.
It takes one to know one, right? Yeah, absolutely. To be able to truly break down every single thing that you're doing throughout the day. And I think particularly if you are dealing with pain, to look into, all right, well, what are the activities that are actually painful for you? If it hurts bending over into the crib, we have to figure out, well, why is that the case? Is it the fact that your back is weak? Could it be the fact that you are just rounding at the back and we need to teach you how to actually hinge at your hips? Or number three, or I mean, there's many different reasons. Is like, and maybe even at this point, if your back is so bad, it might actually make sense for your partner to actually put the baby in and out of the crib so your back heals. And what I really appreciate with what you do, Rob, especially when it comes to creating programs that are really applicable to parenthood daily activities, it's like, okay, you're going to do this exercise, it's going to simulate this activity. And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me as you are replicating these activities in the workouts themselves, it's kind of like an inner body experience, because when you're carrying a kid, especially when they're a toddler, they're going to be squirming, they're going to be moving around. When you're carrying like an infant, they're pretty much like a sack of potatoes, right? And so as compared to, say, a weight, which is a very static thing, it allows us to actually create a good solid base and foundation of movement, which then we can apply to our children. Does that sound about right?
Exactly. And then I always encourage everyone to lift heavy. When I say heavy, it's heavy relative to you, but not to be afraid to go from the 10 pounds to the 20 or the 20 to the 30, because if you get really good at picking up 100 pounds off the ground, it's going to be a lot easier to pick your 30-pound child off the ground, right? So even if that 30-pound child is squirming, there's other exercises, for example, dumbbell carries, that can simulate the squirminess of a child. So yeah, it provides such a foundation that only benefits, well, I take that back, it benefits everyone, because not only are you in less pain and making it easier on you, you're probably able to play a lot more with the child. So the child and the parent wins.
And one of the biggest things that I would often tell the parents that I would work with, and especially when they're dealing with pain, where like my back hurts or my hip hurts when I'm picking up my child, I'll tell them one of the most important things that you can do when lifting is actually engaging your core. You want to tense up your abs. And I would actually tell my clients, I'd be like, listen, this is going to sound so strange to you, but your child is going to love it when you growl while picking them up, because they love noise. It's a great sensory input. And as a result, you're going to experience a much tenser core, which allows you to pick up your kid without pain, right? And so it's an opportunity for us to be able to experience these things in isolation so we can truly problem solve, allowing you to actually do the activity with a lot less pain or no pain whatsoever. And so the idea is we're looking at mechanics, being able to do things correctly. And the reality is the fact that there, in some cases, you're not going to be able to have the best mechanics, and that's totally okay. And what that requires is us to actually practice the best mechanics as much as we can. And then from there, we can afford to have to lose that position for a moment or two without actually causing more pain or without actually creating the injury in itself. Now, exercise is all great. It's important for us to sleep. So it's like, if we look at the trifecta of optimal health, we have exercise, which I think a lot of people, even myself, actually concentrate a lot on. The second piece is sleep, right? Now, so much information on how to like fit sleep in, and we also know how important sleep is. But for your clients, what would you say your biggest principles are on trying to get that sleep that's necessary for healing, health, and optimal brain function / parenthood?
I would also add that sleep is probably more important than exercise, because like you said, there's recovery. A lot of people think of the exercise, they think, oh, this exercise makes me stronger. You actually get stronger in the recovery, right? If you're recovering from an injury and you're stretching and you're mobilizing, that usually heals better if you're sleeping more. So, that being said, they're tasks. We talk about tasks and routines and stuff that we have to do, but also identify the tasks you don't have to do. The task in your life that literally keep you up at night. And when I say that, I mean, yes, the British Bake Off show on the TV, the doom scrolling on Instagram. Can that wait? Will this stuff on my timeline be here in the morning? Probably. And I think one of the biggest things that parents like have a stranglehold on, they don't want to let go, is the quote unquote me time at the end of the night. And while there is a lot to be said that is quality time that you do deserve, you also deserve some sleep. So if you're scrolling on Instagram until, let's say, 11 p.m., you could probably cut that down to 10, right? I'm not saying not to do it, just cut it down. There's other tricks to help you fall asleep faster once that time hits. For example, caffeine, trying to cut out caffeine 8 hours before bed, trying to cut out alcohol before bed, because those things really make it hard to recover, make it hard to sleep, which then makes it hard to recover. I had another one, I'm blanking on it. But those are going to be the main ones. And then there's the other things that we try to do for our child that we should do for ourselves. That's going to help us sleep. Dark room, right? Temperature being correct. You don't have to do the white noise machine, but some people do sleep better if there's some kind of static noise in the background. So things like that can definitely help your quality of sleep, even if it's going to get interrupted at 2 a.m.
What's interesting is like when you have young children, you're like, our kid needs a nap. Right? Like they need to nap. And it's like, well, us parents, like we need to get some sleep too. And I know for myself, and we were very deliberate on practicing this because we put our daughter down to bed around like 8 o'clock. And usually by 8 o'clock, we're pretty exhausted too. And luckily there's nothing on TV that is worth watching past 8 o'clock. So when we put her down, we go to sleep as well. We're like, okay, like we're exhausted. We're going to go to sleep. And, like when it comes to getting stuff done around the house, like that is absolutely something that we like talk about throughout the day. We're like, okay, we need to get this stuff done. We work together as a team. And yeah, like sleep is one of the most important things, and it's actually very important, especially when it comes to injury recovery. So let's move on to the third tier, right, which is nutrition, which is a very important thing. And this is everything that you do, Rob, I'm a huge fan of, and I think you do a particularly good job in counseling parents or coaching parents through like optimal eating habits too. And rather than doing that all or nothing type of scenario, it makes you're providing that like much more sustainable, consistent way. So tell us a little bit more about like your nutritional philosophy. How can us parents, especially the ones who are stressed, and the parents who are actually injured, who are even more stressed because they're like, I can't do these activities. It's really easy for us to use food as a coping mechanism. But food should be fueling us to make us feel great and provide us the energy. When you're having someone who's coming in being like, Rob, I'm so stressed, but I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. All I want is a piece of chocolate cake at night. How do we navigate that realm to be able to say, like, let's put some more nutritious foods into your day. Let's make it so that you are feeling your best. How can we make that possible?
The easiest way to make this possible is to focus on just one nutritional habit at a time. And when we're talking to parents, most of them, they know exactly what they should be doing, but it seems so overwhelming. They have a million things on their plate, pun intended, but they don't know where to start. And what ends up happening is they don't do anything because they're overwhelmed. So you should be eating 3 meals a day. I know that sounds very elementary, but when you don't have time in the morning, when your lunch is literally whatever your toddler doesn't eat, and you're just like eating sandwich crust and calling that lunch, that's not a setup for success, right? We should be eating more plants and protein. So I say plants, I mean fruits and vegetables. I don't even tell parents which they should eat. Just pick the fruits you love, pick the vegetables you love, cook them however you love them, as long as you're not frying them. I think you're doing A-okay. And just making sure they're part of each meal. And then when you practice this habit over, you're like, okay, for breakfast, I had cereal with a banana. And for lunch, I had this grilled chicken salad. For dinner, we had this, steak and pasta salad. That piece of chocolate cake at the end of the night it's not a big deal. It doesn't make the big dent. Versus when you skip breakfast because you had to get out the door to get to work and do daycare drop off. When you worked through lunch, now you're just shoveling food in your face because you're stressed, because you're hungry, because your hormones are just doing all sorts of wackiness. Then that makes justifying chocolate a little harder. Let me tell you, Ashley, I'm going to tonight go and eat a cup of Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia. Best ice cream flavor. I won't take anyone. Don't at me. That is the best flavor on earth. But it's following after a day of a very balanced diet so that I can enjoy my Cherry Garcia with no shame, no guilt. And I'm gonna go to bed happy.
It's certainly a treat, right? And identifying, okay, it is a treat. It's like that also means that you're not going to be eating like French fries and burgers like the whole day because one, it's a lot, but also number two, you're probably not going to feel great after eating burgers, fries all day, and then having a cup of Ben & Jerry's. And so, yeah, it's particularly. I'm so glad you talked about like fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of fiber and nutrients in fruits and vegetables, what actually allows us to really heal our tissues. And there's been a lot of research talking about how when you're having excess elevated levels of blood sugar, it's actually inflammatory. And when you are dealing with an injury or dealing with pain, you are in an inflammatory state. Not to say that inflammation itself is a bad thing. You need inflammation to actually heal. But if your behaviors, especially with what you're putting in your body, is going to continuously push that cycle of inflammation, it can be a little bit more challenging. And plus, when you're eating your ice cream once a week, twice a week, it tastes so much better compared to eating ice cream every single day, right? And I know that for me. And I'll tell you what, my favorite food is pho and spaghetti. And when I have my pho once a month or once every other week, it tastes way better compared to if I were to eat it every single day. So, being able to have that balanced diet and being able to really map out your day to allow yourself the opportunity to care for yourself too. Again, there's no shame in trying to have you focus on taking care of yourself, nor should you be shamed into taking care of yourself. Yes, everyone's got 24 hours in a day, but everyone's life is different. And you can optimize what you have by focusing on the strategies that we talked about today. And the reality is, especially when you are dealing with pain, it is going to be hard to do a lot of your daily activities because it's going to be limiting. But there are people like myself, people like Rob, who will actually guide you through and help insert these opportunities of self-care so you can feel a little bit better and do a little bit more with your kids. And so going off of that, Rob, the listeners out there who want to learn a little bit more about you or want to learn more about the work that you do, what's the best way to get in touch and get some more information?
There's two ways. The easiest way is just to find me on Instagram at Coach Rob Brown. There you'll find a lot of different just free tips that I post throughout the day. You'll also see the link that you can just join our newsletter so that you can get some free information directly into your email box a couple of times a week. Or you can find me at CR.
Listeners, if you did not get a chance to write that down, I'm actually going to be putting the info into the show notes. Rob, as always, it's great seeing you, my man. Thanks for being on.
Thank you, Ash. Good seeing you. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you got some help from today's podcast. And for more info, check us out at ifixyoursciatica.com. Have a fantastic and pain-free day. No patient-therapist relationship is formed by listening to this podcast. We are not providing medical advice, and all information should be confirmed by a medical provider.